Yeah, we should have planned. Yeah. I'm sure.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's right. Mary Jane have any more agendas or we got
Mary Jane, do you have any?
Sir, how are you?
Your agenda.
Here.
Sorry, me too.
Thank you.
Mary Jane, he needs one.
She stole mine.
Thank you.
Or Mary Jane.
Oh, that's right.
Yeah, it was great. Please.
When are you gonna get that to politics?
They sent.
Sort of.
I've got a meeting after this.
They do that today. They get numbers from up here too. Well, public and utility. I have a chance. I think there's a little bit of delay.
How you doing today?
I did. It was good. Learned a lot. I think you're doing,
The speed of light that they're going.
I think you're going very well.
How was your trip? Exhausting.
It was the exhausting.
It was a bus every in the desert. But the stuff you got to see was just kind of awesome. And then we went to Petro, Jordan, come through these narrow passages and hardly anything. You're faced with the thing out of the Indiana movie. It's like it's real. And it's nothing. They just carved it out of the side of the granite mountain. And it's a big temple. And it's a much bigger one. I thought that was the real thing. Actually, there's about a half a dozen things all around.
Yes.
Spectacular.
Welcome to the October 22nd, 2024 Porter County Redevelopment Commission meeting. If you would please stand and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Mary Jane, roll call, please.
Barb Regetz.
Here.
Bill Herring.
Here.
Ralph.
Here.
Jason Gilliano.
Here.
Andy Maletta.
Here.
Mike Brickner.
Here.
Madam President, you have a quorum.
Thank you. Would you run through the consent agenda, please?
Consent agenda includes the approval of the minutes of September 24, 2024, the financial report, and the approval of the claims. End of consent agenda.
We have a motion to approve.
So moved.
We have a motion and a second to approve the consent agenda. All in favor say aye. Aye.
Aye.
All opposed, same sign. Motion carries. South Haven TIF update. Tim Brust, William Steiner. Do you want to grab that mic?
Sure. Because I don't have to sing or anything. Okay, I have had a little bit of success with a few of the different property owners. Quite a few are still not responding to letters. I've also been out visiting, knock on people's cards, etc. I've even tried to do weekends in case people are working. Some people have just chosen not to respond. It's not that unusual. But a couple of things of note. There is about 21 acres of land under contract that is on the Poolman Associates property currently. That would be wrapping around the Casey's, so it takes up all of the Highway 6 frontage and all of the, or a decent amount of frontage heading north of Casey's. That is going through due diligence right now. It is more of a commercial nature, and I'm going to probably looking a little more industrial. So that's going to depend on getting approvals and a zoning change and stuff for it. But that can be very significant. I've worked with the developer on a couple of other things. We're doing several things in the area. And that would be a very nice commercial, more retail type project. That being said, it also could have a little bit of impact with the rest of their property because then you want to make sure you have a transition or hopefully more demand for commercial retail. And some of the interior properties we've been approaching owners with would be more suitable for industrial type. People of owners have said yes, they would definitely be interested in participating. One is the McCool Investments property, that's about 63 acres, has a little bit of frontage on Highway 6, and then it has frontage on McCool Road. The Tinsley property is 29 acres at the corner of 875 north of McCool. And then there's a Cook family who said they're interested in, just taking their time and thinking about it a little bit more. But she's been very responsive, trading messages, and following up with phone calls frequently, which is encouraging. I did have a very nice visit with family that owned the Rockhurst Golf Course. They actually control a little over 250 acres due to some family ownership in that area. Some of the property on the north of 875 north might be a little challenging because the 3 residents are there, but they do have a golf course south of that and even land that wraps around it. It was interesting. The family members are getting older. Their goal right now is to turn it back into farmland, which was where they turned it into a golf course. We talked quite a bit at length on that, the farm ground, etc. And also the soil in that area is okay, but it's not great farm ground and would have limited value. They looked at it more as that's the way they felt it was, but they kind of chuckled and said, our children who will be inheriting it moving forward will probably have other ideas when it comes to that. But they said, we're probably not the right way. As long as we're here, we'd like to see it go more natural than what it was historically. But she said, we talked a little bit about values of farm ground versus development property. And, again, they were more thinking for the good of the land, but she said their children would probably be more interested in a higher return. So that's I view that as an encouraging answer. And then, it may not happen 6 months or a year or anything from now, but it was not a hard no. Or, there are other times where families feel strongly about it. can either put a restriction to that effect or donate, not-for-profit entity or something would never be developed. But that was not the case. So I'm still planning on following up with some of these other owners. Some of them did not. Sometimes I'd rather be told just no than have to keep chasing them. But nobody has flat out said no, we would not do anything. I'm not be willing to talk to you. So I'll continue, as long as you'd like me to with following. But if there's any specific questions, I'd like to answer.
You mentioned 3 dwellings on the north side of the property.
I'm sorry, what was that?
You said there were three.
Right across from where the clubhouse is located, 3 family members right there.
And they're in those.
They're in, yes, they do reside.
Okay.
Yep. So it is their personal residences. But that being said, the golf course did run up and around those houses and everything. They seem, again, that they would like to restore farm ground currently, but also, what I typically find in situations like that, as long as you provide adequate buffers and, whether it's evergreen trees, etc., it's usually a situation you can work around. They're used to having golfers going through their golf outings and everything, so as long as they're private, they retain some privacy, then it may be a possibility in the future.
Well, I think as we start to see development in that area, more interest will also develop. So
Yep.
it will, that will beget.
It's also a little difficult now. Some people would certainly get their attention if they knew what kind of dollars and stuff you're talking about. Some people, it doesn't matter. They're more anti-development, but a lot of these people have been doing research on a lot of the families that own these properties for 40 and 50 years, and quite frankly, they would purchase them for $300 to $400 an acre or $1,000 an acre. If they found out all of a sudden it would be worth 20 to 30 to maybe more, depending on what the user is per acre, it also can certainly affect their level of interest.
Mm-hmm.
But, until we know who the users are or what type and everything, it's kind of hard. You never want to throw numbers out there prematurely, because the minute something gets in their head, they're going to that numbers 5 years from now. So.
Okay.
Are the buildings on the clubhouse and so forth associated with the golf course in any kind of shape?
They actually, when we talked about that a little bit, they did say they were actually thinking about maybe trying to rent that out and use it as either an office space or something. It is setting dormant currently. It said they have kept utilities on it and stuff, but it is dormant.
A lot of times they turn them into some sort of a venue for weddings or receptions and things like that.
I think something like that they'd be open to. Again, their biggest concern with that, even if they got a business in there, is if they're literally directly across the street. So I said we would want to make sure it was a reputable business and had normal business hours, and that parking lot lights on until 11 or 12. So
Gotcha.
But again, there are certainly ways to screen or do some things.
Any other questions for Mr. Bruss? Thank you so much.
Sure.
Great job. Okay, the next item is, and why many of you are here today, is we are going to have a public hearing. And before we do that, I think, do we want to preface that with any sort of
I
prelude?
can give a summary overview if you,
Okay.
Commissioner President. So this afternoon, and I want to keep this brief because we're on limited time.
Right.
For the chambers. The Woods Edge Residential Housing Development Program by state statute is under sections 53 to 57 of the Indiana Code for Redevelopment Law. And it requires that once the commission considers a residential housing development program, that the impacted and adjacent property owners be notified and have an opportunity through a public meeting to comment, whether support, remonstrate against, or provide any input into the development as it has been presented to the commission. So just as a quick overview, it is the housing development program that is being presented this afternoon for discussion and public hearing, public meeting, is the Woods Edge Residential Housing Development Program. The purpose of the program is to identify areas for residential development in the unincorporated areas of the county's redevelopment district, such that they are, based upon discussions, that they are targeted to be within reasonable proximity of incorporated municipalities, be it cities or towns, and to allow for infrastructure provisions and smart development, smart growth, as well as incorporating infrastructure available so that cost effectiveness is provided as far as development. The Woods Edge residential housing development area consists of about 39 acres. It is generally located south in the southwest quarter of adjacent to the city of Valparaiso, south of Joliet Road, north of Northland Drive or US Highway 30, west of Hayes Leonard Road, and east of Skyline Drive in Center Township in unincorporated Porter County. Currently, the acreage consists of two parcels. One parcel, I'm just going to go by the block, and lot number 351-010, which is 0.829 acres, classified as vacant, unplatted. It has an assessed value of $22,200, and the taxes on the property as of paid 2024 are $375. The second parcel, 351-011, is 38.317 acres. Both are currently vacant. The assessed value of that property is about $87,400, and the taxes paid on the property is $1,236. So in all, there's your 39 acres of the property. The total assessed value is a little bit short of $100,000, and the taxes total on the property is about $1,600 in total. The Woods Edge residential development program anticipates about a $30 million investment in residential development, of which about $8 million of that would be public improvements and investment, not necessarily done by the County Redevelopment Commission, but they are public improvements, road, streets, right-of-way improvements, access to the property, other improvements that are outlined in the budget. The anticipation of the residential program is 93 dwelling units, between 7,500 square feet lots and 10,250 square foot lots. The estimated market price of the units is $650,000, as low as $500,000 between them. The estimated taxes on those on the high end would be about $5,700. On the low end would be about $4,600. Upon build out, it's estimated that the properties would be valued at about $53,400,000 in assessed value. That would generate about $412,000 in taxes annually. That would go in. That would provide for tax base and tax levy for properties. As far as the acquisition, it has to be identified in the program. There is no acquisition of property required. And as always, with the Redevelopment Commission, there is a prohibited use of eminent domain. I also did look at the tax impact of the assessed value being brought in. In general, the phasing of the redevelopment program was over a 7-year period, with about 13 units being built annually. That would so the amount of assessed value of $53,400,000 would have a tax impact of $0.0213, so about a little over 2 cents. The current Center Township tax rate is $1.70, which means the tax rate would go down to about 1.67, 1.68, slightly. Also take into consideration that due to circuit breakers, the current single-family homestead owners would not be impacted by the additional assessed value. The only difference would be your circuit breaker impact would be reduced. What I call your tax cap gap would be reduced slightly because of that. The only quantitative impact to the county would be to the cumulative funds. The Porter County cumulative Development Fund would have an impact of about $10,500 annually. And the special taxing unit airport cume fund would be impacted by about $1,600. So it would generate about $442,000 in tax increment annually. If the Redevelopment Commission were to make grants or other types of funds available to the overlapping taxing units that are impacted quantitatively, it would generate about $430,000 taxes, tax increment revenue for the project if an allocation area was designated. As I stated this evening, is about receiving input on the program and the project itself. The next steps, if determined to move forward, would be for a meeting to be scheduled for the fiscal officers of all the taxing units, and the county assessor acting as the Center Township assessor. That we would have to provide 30 days notice for that second meeting, and just as notification, the executive summary and the full housing development program that was provided to the impacted and adjacent property owners is available for public dissemination, and I believe it's on the website also, the county's website, so it is accessible.
Okay, can you just talk about the breakout for the proposed the request from the developer? What that proposal is? I don't think you mentioned that.
So I believe the developer, if they are here today,
He's behind you.
oh, that would come from them, but I believe the request was for the program area to be designated as an allocation area for tax increment purposes to fund and reimburse for the public improvements being made that would be available from the tax increment revenue. The tax increment revenue would be pledged to an economic development revenue bond of Porter County. The developer, correct me if I'm wrong, and you are here, the developer would be purchasing that bond at an interest rate that would be negotiated with Porter County. So the Redevelopment Commission on their side, so we all understand, the Redevelopment Commission would be pledging a tax increment towards the repayment of the bond. The bond would be initiated by the county's Economic Development Commission and approved by the Porter County Council. I would defer to legal on that, but I believe it's the Porter County Council that would approve that bond. Mm-hmm. And then what would the availability of tax increment revenue at a certain debt service coverage would then be used to reimburse for the public improvements that would be made at the site.
And from the modeling that you've done so far, can you just give a sense of the proposed percentages and the dollar amounts that represents?
I could do that. So from the modeling that I have done to date, and this was through discussion with the commissioners, the total gross tax increment distributions over a 20-year period would be about $7.2 million. The commissioners have instructed me to look at a 70-30 split, meaning 70% of that tax increment revenue would be used to reimburse the developer for public improvements made. 15% would remain with the Redevelopment Commission for other economic development projects or programs, and 15% would be granted back to the Valparaiso Community School Corporation, which is authorized and allowable under the state statute. To summarize, the amount that would be available, principal, would be a little bit over $3 million, and the less any capitalized interest, debt service, reserve fund, cost of issuance, or miscellaneous, that would provide for anywhere between $2.2 to $2.9 million of available project funds for the developer.
Thank you.
Does
anybody have any questions before we open it up for the public here? Okay, we're now going to close our meeting and we're going to open it up to a public meeting. We have a microphone here and we have a microphone over here. So if anyone would like to come up and speak, please do so.
Hi, my name's David Williams. I own the property at 152 Hayes Leonard, which is all to the very far east there. That whole part of the wood's edge is my property boundary too. Now, I've got a few questions. One of my questions is, it seems like the wood's edge is grading all the property down to my side, and my property goes down. Is that going to all be wet there now? I mean,
We'll have,
you don't want that.
what we'll do is we'll have someone answer the questions at the end, okay? So,
Okay. And another thing, are we going to remain Center Township, or are we going to be annexed into Valparaiso because of this subdivision? Another thing is that when they were putting in the pipeline, they cut within 10 foot of all my 50-foot pine trees in the back there. And I'm really worried that from that, those trees could probably come back over onto my property because all the roots are at the top with the pine trees. That's one of my interests. Another is, who's going to take care of any maintenance on those trees, because those trees are hanging over onto wood's edge. I can't do that. It's not my problem. That's another thing. And the landscape. Wondering about the landscaping. I need to have some privacy there. And now I'm open on the road coming in from Hayes Leonard, and then the other way. Two ways my property is open to that whole wood's edge there. I mean, I look on sit on my patio in the back, I'm looking at wood's edge. I want to know how they're going to go about landscaping that to give me the privacy that I need.
okay.
That's it.
Okay, can we just have a comment on, we're actually talking about creating the residential taxing increment, which is different from talking about drainage and landscaping, which will happen at a plan commission meeting. So we can certainly, if we have time to answer these questions, we can answer these questions. But this is more a conversation about setting up what would you call it? Do you want to make a comment?
Yeah, if the questions are regarding the development that's going on, that already went through Plan Commission and our office for building permits. So if you have questions, those please see me after the meeting. We can set up a time to discuss those with you.
Okay, thank you. Anybody else?
Nicholas Mish, 209 to White. Who's going to take care of the problem when they put this pond, retention pond, that flooded all of us over onto White, on Kingsland, or on Northwest Hill? My neighbor had over 6 feet of water in his backyard, and no one did nothing about it until someone started. I started complaining, then they reversed the pumps and pumped it back. Who's taking care of all this? The pipe that runs across there is 12 inches. It goes from a 12 to an 8 to a 4. How is a 12-inch pipe draining to an 8 to a 4 going to handle the water coming out of that subdivision? And no one's done nothing for any of us over there.
Okay, thank you. Again, if I could just mention that these sorts of concerns, if you want to hold these off until the end of the meeting, and Mike, will you hang around a little bit? And if you could just express to him some of these things that you're seeing and experiencing, and then he can set up a time to, go ahead.
This was expressed way back when the first meeting when they were supposed to put a cap on the end of that drain. The county was supposed to do it. It has never been done since this was all developed. And what's that been? 2 years since this was started?
Okay.
You know, and the line's been there for 5 years. And there's no end of it, no cap on the end of it. Which I was promised when they put it in, there'd be a cap on it that's done.
Okay.
And there's nothing. So, do I really believe anything's going to happen? No.
Okay. Anybody else want to come up? Go ahead.
The only comment I have, Redstone, I'm on the county council. I just would like to understand how this is going to help the county. Lived here for 30 years. My brother put in a subdivision, and there wasn't this residential TIF available. I can understand if maybe we were doing $250,000 houses, starter homes. But I need to know a little bit more about this before I'm comfortable, I guess, financing a developer to put in a subdivision. And I mean, we've had growth in the county for 30 years since I've been here, and I'm not the type of person to, I guess, finance a developer. It just doesn't seem, right. So but to be fair, I do need to understand a little bit more about this because I know it's a new law that came into effect. I just wouldn't want to see Pandora's box being open for the whole county. We're tipping, thousands of homes. So that's my.
Mm-hmm. Thank you.
Suna, Porter County Assessor. One other, I feel like the TIF is something we do to bring development into the area. And for residential homes, we've got a lot of subdivisions going already. So many that my office is having a hard time keeping up with new construction. And so I'm wondering why we would want to finance this when we already have that development. Many developers out there doing housing already.
Thank you.
Hello. So I'm off of Hazelard as well, run on 2 sides by Ted.
Could you please give us your name?
Ed. So I'm on Hazelard. Ted, his property is actually to the side and the rest around the back of mine. So I have a similar concern as far as what kind of landscape we're doing. Getting some sort of berm with maybe some arborvitae's on it, or do our privacy and kind of give us that barrier with all this construction going on. My other major concern is that since the construction has actually started, we've seen a major change in the well water quality. It was always nice, clean water. You could drink it right out of the garden hose, no filters on it, that kind of stuff. And since then, since they started, it had a bad smell and taste to it. That's kind of negatively affected the well water. I tried to contact the county in the past about it, but they just told me to contact my water supplier. But Earth doesn't really listen, So those are my major concerns. It's pretty much like I said, maintain my privacy, our privacy, and what's going on with this water. Is that something we can look into and figure out why the water instantly changed at the same time that construction started?
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else? Okay, going once, going twice. Okay, I'm going to close.
President,
Oh, I'm sorry.
2 comments that were received.
Oh, you're right. Sorry.
Megan Burke requested a copy of the executive summary, and the commissioner's office assistants provided that to her, and we have not heard from her since. Also, I'd like to read into the record to the Porter County Redevelopment Commission, residents of Lincoln Hills, Woods Edge subdivision. I've enclosed a photo of a change to the existing.
Can you hold the microphone a little bit closer, Mary Jane? Pardon me? Yeah, just so we can hear you a little better.
Okay. I have enclosed a photo, better, of the change to the existing grade level on the west side of Woods Edge that runs behind the homes on Skyline Drive. It is higher than it used to be. This concerns me regarding the stormwater runoff. Parentheses, I estimate its height to be about 15 to 20 feet and length 200 feet long, close parentheses. There is a small retention pond west of the grade, and I did not see a drain in it. I'm concerned about stormwater runoff because it will run into the Lincoln Hills ditch. That ditch starts in my and my neighbors' backyards. The ditch runs through a marsh in front of my residence and drains into a creek behind many of the residents on Lincoln Hills Drive. That creek also takes on a steady flow of water from Sylvan Manors Lake, as well as their stormwater runoff. I'm concerned about flooding and septic issues. If my backyard floods, the ability of my septic laterals will be compromised, as well as some of my neighbors' septic. Please note, a 1-inch rainstorm deposits 27,154 gallons on 1 acre. Source, U.S. Geological Survey. Thank you for your time. Sincerely, James Odell. He did not give an address. But this is the picture that came with the. And he can.
Would you also like to add any additional comments?
Yes.
Can you come up to them? Yeah.
Basically, I was informed of this before it happened. If I was, did not reach my mailbox. Really appreciate that. But anyways, Lincoln Hills has a history of flooding. It starts with my backyard, which was designed by Mr. Bangle, surveyor, and it's runs way behind my neighbor's house on Lincoln Hills Drive. And it's the problem with the Lincoln Hills ditch is it takes on water from Sylvan Manor daily. That ditch is constantly running, and when it floods my backyard, floods my neighbor's backyard. The problem is the laterals are located there, so it compromises their septic system. So I'm really concerned about this swell. Did you get the picture of the swell? That they increased the elevation. I don't know if you got that picture. They really increased the elevation in my backyard, and that's a problem. That Lincoln Hills ditch will not handle that rainwater. They did put in a retention pond, and I appreciate that. I'm not sure that it's a very small retention pond. I flew over it to pilot. It is very small, and I'm concerned about stormwater. You know, I grew up in Lincoln Hills, and we constantly had to limit our use of septic system. Their laterals were there, and I flooded home. This is all drained. It's all coming to my backyard, and everyone in Lincoln Hills is coming to your backyard too. So that's where the creek drained into. So I don't think that was a good idea to elevate it's like 15, 20 foot high, and it's about 150, 200 foot long. It was not a good idea. It's going right to my backyard, and it's going right into people's backyards. So I'm concerned about it. That's why I just want to show up and let you.
Mr. Odell, could you please state your address?
Yeah, 219 Scanlon.
And that is all the comments we have received.
Okay. Anyone else before we close the public hearing? Okay. Again, I just want to let you know the purpose of this meeting today is to discuss the residential TIF. I understand that there are some building and development concerns. And again, we have a shortage of time here today. There's another meeting in here at 5 o'clock. So I would suggest that after this meeting, that if you could speak to our head of our plan department and to address any concerns at that time. if that would be okay. I did want to turn it over then. We will close the public hearing and return back to our meeting. I did want to see if there were any comments from any of the board members regarding. Yes, go ahead, Andy.
Yeah. Certainly, I no objection to the development because that sounds like that went through a different board than
Mhm.
what we are here. But my question is why are we doing a residential TIF? I agree with Mr. Stone and Ms. Neff. Residential TIFs, my understanding, were developed in the state of Indiana to help either blighted areas or areas in need of redevelopment for affordable housing, or that type of thing, or in communities where they were trying to spur some development. When I look at the location of this development, it's so close to Valparaiso, and I think at the last meeting there was some discussion that it potentially probably could be annexed by Valpo at some point, which has got an abundance of housing developments. There's no need for that. This certainly doesn't qualify for affordable housing. And it also sounds like maybe it's even some of it has already started. And usually you use TIFs and tax abatements and those things as incentives to try to spur growth and to get someone to come in and do a development. Usually, it seems to me like we're beyond that, and I just don't understand why we would be doing a TIF for this property. That feels to me like this probably is going to happen anyway. And so why would the county want to do that? It just doesn't make sense to me personally. And again, I'm not a voting member on this board, but that's just my opinion.
I really appreciate your insights. Thank you, Andy.
Yeah, I just think the tool available to help developers necessarily just for underdeveloped areas. I don't think that's that's the way the legislation was written. It's clearly able to be used in this situation, and I just think anything that's out there that they're meeting the requirements of, and sure, it'll be a benefit to them, but at the end of the day, this is a developer which we all hope will continue on, right? Do the next development and the next development after that. And if this tool is available, I would see how the process works, and I would go after it again on the next subdivision. And it goes for anybody. You know, anybody at all wanting to do a subdivision that's not specific to a blighted area or specific to a certain category of housing or housing market. So I see it's a tool that they're able to utilize, and it'll help them, and I see it'll help growth, help spark more developments in the future.
Madam President, Mr.
Yeah,
Frederick.
if you wouldn't mind, my name is Bill Ferngreaves on behalf of the developer today. I appreciate what Dan and Mary Jane have explained to you earlier about very well.
Can you
I'm
speak
sorry.
into the mic?
Well summed up what we're here for tonight. And this residential TIF, albeit new, is a tool, as Mr. Gillian has indicated, available to developers to incentivize growth in proximity to municipalities, which this is. Encourages infrastructure investment in a more rural area, although still close to the city limits. That's exactly what it's doing here. So what you're allowing to happen is the full development of a brand new subdivision, meeting all of the current county standards, enhancing fire protection, and importantly, meeting what the intent of the state legislature was to improve housing stock. It's not limited to affordable housing, not expensive housing, not middle of the road housing. It's there to incentivize housing stock, and it didn't say which kind. This particular housing stock, allowing these homes to be built, will allow a transition from existing homes into these homes as well. So it's a tool. All of the items that are supported for you in keeping with the exact purpose of this statute, which is to incentivize developers to make residential projects that do meet their housing stock. We believe this is right in the wheelhouse of that particular legislative intent, and we've provided the information. We think the impacts of the county are incremental, but very important to allow, more importantly, this housing stock to be encouraged. And we're excited about the project. We feel it's a very good fit for Porter County to roll out this housing TIF opportunity. Thank you.
Okay, and I do have a question too. As you said, this is about providing an incentive or to incentivize residential development. And I know we're getting close to running out of time. But I'm wondering in this case, how much incentive at this point in time in Porter County do we need for residential development?
Well, and I can add a little bit closer to the microphone. Um, if you were to look around and invest, ask realtors what is an appropriate level of housing stock available in Porter County, it's very low. Typically, what my understanding is, realtors are looking for around 4 to 6 months supply of housing to be available at all times. Currently, they're at 2 months or less of available housing. I understand Ms. Neff indicated, she's got a lot of work to do in her office, doing a fine job of it. We don't think that this sort of thing will open the door to them, but if you do the research, look, housing stock available in Porter County is actually very low, even without this project.
And is that possibly because of such high demand that they can't even keep up? We don't even need to provide that incentive. There's so much development going on right now that that incentivizing is not necessary because of the demand.
I don't think that that's actually right. I think the incentive is needed because of simply the cost of providing this infrastructure and extending to these locations. There is demand for housing, obviously, but we can't provide that, and the costs are incurred by developers to create this type of environment are simply very, very high, and that's exactly why the state legislature came up with this tool that a local body such as this could use to encourage that development and help defray some of those costs of getting a project like this complete.
I would ask, do we know how many housing projects are planned or going on right now in the area? And how many of those used or needed TIF to happen?
Mike, do you have a sense in unincorporated Porter County versus, you wouldn't be aware of what's happening at the municipal level, but are you aware of the demand at the county level?
Being a short time review, I do not have a lot of data, but my
Okay.
observations have been, we're constantly being approached subdivisions. Granted, we have the interest rates go up and all that put a damper on things, and things slowed down. We didn't have any large-scale developments. Those that were large were finishing up. We do see on the horizon that it starts, now that interest rates are stabilizing, we do see on the horizon, and people are inquiring. They do want to build in Porter County. They do want to build single family and other types of residential products. So I can't predict how many or exactly where, but we're a very popular place for residential right now. It's just been slow since the interest rates and kind of the price. It's amazing the price of the homes, and yet people are still doing it.
Okay.
Go
ahead. Yeah, go ahead.
And I don't remember during your presentation the time frame for the completion of this project comparison. If it was a TIF, if it wasn't TIF, would it take longer to finish the development? Because they would have to pay for all this themselves.
I think what it will do is actually encourage a better project.
Okay.
Get a complete project and appropriate expenditures to provide a better outcome for Porter County, a better project going forward. And we think with this incentive, it will actually happen more quickly.
Thanks.
Okay, well, in discussing with Attorney McClure about what we need to do, our next, if we were to go forward with this, our next meeting is, do you want to explain what our next meeting is so that we can correctly phrase the motion?
So your next meeting by statute would be with the fiscal officers of all the overlapping taxing units. That would be the county, Center Township, fiscal officers, the airport, library, and the schools, as well as other individuals that have fiscal officers that are impacted by levies. In addition to that, the statute does require and recommend having the township assessor. In this case, it would be the Porter County Assessor acting as the Calumet Township Assessor to be part of that meeting. However, it's also been recommended by me as the consultant on economic development consultant that once again the public be invited to this second meeting, which would be at your next redevelopment commission meeting, and it would have to be advertised 30 days.
Okay, so we actually need to have a motion and a vote to move forward to have that next meeting.
Right. So if you would entertain a motion for the staff to schedule a public meeting, public hearing for the November 6th Porter County Redevelopment Commission for the
November 6th.
26th for the purpose of meeting with the fiscal officers of overlapping taxing units, the Porter County Assessor, as well as affected and adjacent property owners once again. That would be the motion entertained.
Anything else? Okay. Anyone want to make that motion?
I'll make a motion.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Could we have the paper ballots? Then you can pass them down to Scott.
All right, voting is as follows. I'll read the names as best I can. Jason Gilliana, yes. Barb Regnus, no. Ralph Neff, no. Is that you? Bill. Is that you? Bill Herring, yes. Mr. Gilliana, nope. Mr. Brickner, yes. 3 yeses, 2 nos.
Okay. Motion carries. So staff is now approved to go ahead with setting up the next meeting.
And just for everybody's understanding, it does not mean that any program has been approved. It's just going for a second meeting.
Right.
Thank you.
Okay. Our next item on the agenda is a discussion about suspending residential TIFs until we complete our comprehensive plan we'll be discussing shortly. So one of the things that we had, and you can sense some of the concern here in this room about whether we really be needing, what type of housing, if any, residential housing do we need to be incentivizing. And we're hoping that by completing this comprehensive plan and in the analysis of that we will identify whether that's something that we do want to continue and the parameters for continuing that. And so we would have much clearer guidelines then as to what sorts of residential TIFs we would entertain. So if we do Woods Edge, are we opening up the floodgates that every developer then for every single development will want to have a TIF? So this is a conversation. Do we want to halt that for the time being until we have time to get the comprehensive plan completed? Anybody have any thoughts on that?
Is the legislation specific to any monetary value of a home and restrictions or things of that nature?
No, there's no monetary limits within the state enabling statute. It's not focused, if that's the question, or targeted.
Right.
Residential. The other issue is it sunsets in 2027 without additional legislation. So that's the playing field we have right now.
I just look at it from our board's perspective, right? It's part of what we do is we're looking for TIFs. We're still trying on the commercial aspect to it, but for this board's survival and if the legislation is there to follow, I just don't see why we wouldn't. That's my opinion. No matter what the cost or the value of the home is, or the location for that matter. It's an incentive for a builder.
Well, what would end up happening is that for 20 years, that tax revenue would no longer go to the county. It would go back to the development to help support their infrastructure development.
Understood, but there's still the incentive from once the development is there.
And what is that?
Just from the revenue of the development itself, of it actually being in the community. Everything else that goes along with that is what I see. Mm-hmm. I would think after 2 years, maybe it's a trial period, and they're seeing how this actually goes. How does it affect the counties? How does it affect the state aspect? Mm-hmm. But like I said, the legislation is there, and I just feel if we don't follow it, then it kind of opens us up to a little bit of ridicule or somebody coming after suing the county over because we're not following the legislation.
Well, the legislation doesn't say you have to do them. So
it doesn't say that's exactly right. Or it does the other.
Right. And as we're talking about tools too, if somebody, I've got a toolkit too, and at home. And if somebody came and gave me a whiz bang tool and said this is the best thing since sliced bread, that doesn't mean I have to use it. So I might need my hammer, I might need my level, I might need my nails, but I might not need that new tool also. So just because we have a tool doesn't necessarily, unless it makes sense for us to use it.
Sure.
So.
Understood.
Andy, you look like you wanted to say something.
No.
Okay. All right.
I think I said.
Anybody else? So, do we want to? Do we have a motion to suspend the residential TIP program until we've completed our comprehensive plan? Okay. Looks like you did a good job. You scared everybody.
I don't mean to scare everybody. I would agree. We probably need to talk about it more to hear those opinions, and even from the council's perspective.
Yeah.
We can approve it here all day long.
Yeah.
What's their view of it?
Yeah.
Right? Because at the end of the day, the buck stops there.
Right.
And
Alrighty, we are really running out of time. Can we have a quick business council update?
Business council, we had 8 of the 9 people attend, and we had a good conversation with them. The conversation ended with their most urgent need, which was workforce. They need trained workforce, and they need reliable workforce. They need workforce that shows up on time and that also continues to work after they're trained. They experience the fact that they train someone and then that someone decides that they don't want to work anymore and they just leave, and that is stressful to their business operation, and that's the short version.
And as a result of that conversation, we're going to invite Center of Workforce Innovation to come to our next meeting, because as she will say, workforce is economic development. Workforce development is economic development. So I think it would be a really good opportunity. And then if we like what she says, we can actually have her come to our next business council meeting and see if there's anything that she can do to help those particular businesses and expand that beyond that. So thank you. All right, Mike, we're ready to talk about the land use plan and thoroughfare plan update.
Yes. Most of you are aware the last time we did an update to our comprehensive plan was 2001, so that's 23 years old. And in reviewing the document, there's a lot of salient, really good things that we need to apply today, but we have to also admit there's things that change. We have more population, we have different ways of looking at things. The conversation we had tonight on residential, whether it's home TIF or large high density housing and all that, those are examples you can cover in a comp plan and give you guidance as you make these decisions. So there's a lot of new things that can be embraced in the last 23 years. So I put together an RFQ. It'll be issued this Wednesday. Tomorrow night I'm presenting to the Planning Commission. They ultimately will be the body that has to adopt the new comp plan. You are being generous because you also see a benefit of having this document as well. You're graciously, my understanding, would be apt to fund this endeavor, which I think is very well needed. So the RFQ is complete. We're going to do a selection meeting. We will invite a handful of consultants, 5 or 6 or 7. They will turn in their qualifications, tell us how they build a better mousetrap. We'll select what we perceive as a very viable candidate. We'll negotiate with them. If we can't negotiate with them, we'll go number 2. That's the process that goes for professional services. So my aim is by before the end of this year, contracting with a consultant so we can start in 2025 running plan update, which will also include our fair plan. Last time they also did in the park master plan, but they've kind of gone on their own. They've recently done their own, so that but it needs to be referenced. So we're being very specific. I think it's well deserved, and we appreciate you guys making this. I'll answer any questions you might have.
How long do you think it'll take to wrap it up?
I'm thinking this will be at least almost 3 quarters worth. It'll be the year 2020.
That's what I'm getting.
It's going to be very robust, and we'll see what the consultants do. We're going to let them be creative and come up with a guide. The secret to a comp plan of many things is a very robust and engaged public input process. It's not just the elected officials, it's community leaders, it's businesses, it's the residents, it's service organizations. You want to hear from all of them. You're basically getting a pulse on your community and what you want to see.
Okay, thank you. Real quick, St. Joe County site visit. Do you want to give a real quick, anybody that was there, by the way, it was an amazing trip. And there actually was an article in the NWA Times the very next day about the solar farm that we had an opportunity to see. Anybody want to comment that was on that trip? Ralph, you want to say anything?
Well, they have a lot of development going on right now. They have the land to do it, and it's relatively not too far away from the expressway, so getting in and out of the industrial sites is not going to be a problem for St. Joe County. But very impressed with the big boys that came to town, Amazon and the solar panels, and a lot of money being spent.
Yep. Yep. Scott, you want to make it?
We learned a lot about the different processes they went through to be able to make the transactions occur, and the amount of vision and the amount of time and planning it takes, and the amount of work that has to go into pre-planning. How much was interesting to hear. We're not the only county that has the elected officials always not singing out of the same hymnal, so it was interesting to hear some of their political battles as far as what kind of development and where. But the process they've taken, what I think we heard was about an 8-year-old department that would, well, Mr. Neff can attest, it's hard to imagine, it's hard to be in many places that had more development happening right now than what was happening Friday when we were over there taking a look. It was.
Can you also, just because we have like 1 minute left, talk about your recommendation for our TIF?
No, we'll get.
Okay. All right. Okay. Alrighty. Well, at any rate, anybody have public comment? We have like 1 minute for public comment, because then there's another meeting in here right at 5 o'clock, and we're at 4:59. So, alrighty. Do we have a motion to adjourn? Second. Okay. Adjourn. Thank you, everyone. We really appreciate it. And again, Mr. Jabo will be available for those of you